interesting part of the story of Tanakh. We learned yesterday, in the first half of chapter 5, about the story how the Jews were not circumcised. There was no bris, there was no brisanya. There was no bris done to the Jewish people besides for the tribe of Levi that did a bris. Everybody else did not do a bris while they were in the desert. So again, let's go over the dates. Moshe Rabbeinu passes away on the 7th of Adar. They mourn for him for 30 days till the 7th of Nisan. 30 days later, they come to the 7th day of the month of Nisan. 3 days later, they cross over, they go over the river, and they're now settled for the first time on the 10th of Nisan in Eretz Yisrael. So some of the questions that, I don't know if you guys ever thought of this, is when did the mun stop coming down? When did the mun stop coming down? And we're going to learn today, according to Rashi's understanding, that the mun stopped when Moshe passed away. After Moshe died, after Moshe passed away, the mun stopped coming down. It was in his merit that the Jews had the mun. But what did they eat? They did not enter Israel until 30 days, 33 days later. Or 30 days later, they didn't enter Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi tells us that the mun used to rot that night, would just rot, whatever was left over. And after Moshe passed away, whatever mun they had stayed fresh and good, and they kept them nourished and fulfilled for the next 30 days until they're going to cross over the Jordan River. And at that point, they're going to be able to eat the local produce. And what's going to happen is, now that they're able to eat the local produce in Eretz Yisrael, they're also going to have to start bringing sacrifices. So we're going to see, they're going to begin with the sacrifice that you bring on Pesach, and that's from the sacrifice of grain, because you're not allowed to eat the grain until you bring the carbon. So let's learn, I think we're holding verse 9. Let's go to verse 9. Vayomer Hashem el Yeshua, so Hashem says to Joshua, Hashem says to Yeshua, Hayoim galoisi es charpas mitzrayim aleichem. Today I removed the embarrassment, the reproach of Egypt from you. I've removed the embarrassment of Egypt from you because you just did a bris milah. Rashi tells us that a very fascinating measure. So first of all, obviously the Egyptians would tell the Jews, what's the difference between us and you? But now Rashi shares this as a whole other message behind the story. By doing a bris, what does it mean that we've removed the embarrassment and the reproach from the Jewish people, from the Egyptians to the Jewish people? He says, as we learned in today's Chumash section, today's Chumash class, that there was a star, and there was a star called Ra. Rashi brings this down actually on the Chumash, the same idea. And it said, and the star said that there was going to be a massive spilling of blood of the Jewish people in the desert. And all the Egyptians told the Jews, very nice, you're running away, but we all follow the stars. And we see in astrology that you are going to die. There's a lot of people, it's going to be a tremendous amount of bloodshed. Now, even the Erev Rav, if you remember, there was a group of Egyptians that Moses accepted their conversion, who they weren't really, questionable. Hashem never told them to accept their conversion. Then we learned that they were the people that instigated the golden calf. But anyway, they always held with them and they said, you know what? We know, we follow the signs of the stars and we know there's going to be a bloodshed. When is that going to happen? But when the Jews all did the circumcision, all males, we said there was a mountain of foreskin because of the circumcision that was done. When that happened, everybody said, aha, now we know what the stars foretold, that there was going to be blood. It wasn't blood of an army attacking the Jewish people and wiping out the Jewish people. The blood that we see is the blood of the circumcision. It was a mitzvah that was done. It wasn't something negative. And they removed the shame and embarrassment of the Jewish people, that everybody was saying that they were never going to make it to Israel, that there was going to be a calamity. But now we know what the calamity is. It's not really a calamity. It really was a mitzvah that everyone did, the idea of bris milah. Very interesting. And they called the place Gilgal ad hayom hazeh. The place is called Gilgal, which I showed you in the map yesterday. That's where the Jews are staying. A place called Gilgal, that is east of the Yericho of Jericho, which we're going to conquer in tomorrow's class. And that is a place called Gilgal. Again, what does Gilgal mean? Gilgal means rolled away. Hashem rolled away this negative embarrassment that the Jews looked like the Egyptians because they were uncircumcised, all the children, and and they were saying that they were going to get destroyed. So by doing the bris milah, finally the Jews are real Jews, and they have their bris, they have their circumcision, and they're proud Jews. And the Jewish people encamped in Gilgal. They lived there, and that they camped in that city. And guess what happens? We know what happens 10 days after the month of Nisan. Not when it was the 10th day of the month of Nisan. What takes place shortly after that? Comes the holiday of Pesach on the 14th of Nisan. They have to bring the Korban Pesach. And guess what? They're circumcised, so they're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach. Because someone who's not circumcised is not allowed to be the Pesach sacrifice. So a few days later, Yasu Pesach, they do the Pesach sacrifice. On the 14th day of the month, the Erev, in the evening, Ba'arvas Yericho, in the plains of Jericho. So they're sitting in the plains of Jericho. The Jewish people are in the city called Gilgal, and they are bringing the Korban Pesach, which they have not brought in 39 years. They didn't bring the Korban Pesach. They weren't allowed to even because they weren't circumcised. But the Jewish people that had left Egypt 40 years earlier, they brought a Pesach sacrifice the next year. From then, they never fulfilled the mitzvah of Pesach. It's not until they enter the land of Israel. Guess what? They're in Israel. They enter Israel literally 3-4 days later. They have a holiday coming up after they arrive in Israel, and they're bringing their first major sacrifice on that holiday. Verse 11. And they eat of the grain of the land. Now they have no man. Their man stayed. Their manna had stopped a month and 3 days earlier. But guess what? Hashem made a miracle that it stayed. But now that they entered Israel, the manna disappears. They have no choice. They got to eat the local produce. All of a sudden, they're back to normal people. They're not anymore living miraculously. Hashem is blessing them that the grain should grow. But I'm not sure, actually, to be honest with you, where the grain came from, because they didn't have plant fields yet or so on. Maybe they had some grain with them. Maybe they bought from people. I'm not sure how it worked. But now they're already eating local Israeli, buy from your local market. They're eating local Israeli produce. Matzah, they're eating matzah. They're eating matzah because it's Pesach. They got to eat matzah. They're eating parched grain, roasted grain. The etzem hayoyim hazeh, the middle of this day. So this is very interesting that the manna came down for exactly 40 years. And he says that how do you get? He actually brings an interesting question. Rashi says, how do you get that the manna came down exactly 40 years? Well, if you count from when the Jews left Egypt, which was Pesach, until now, till this Pesach, it was exactly 40 years. From when they left Egypt, when they arrived in Israel, it was exactly 40 years. But the problem is that Hashem didn't send the manna down at the same day that the Jews left Egypt. Jews had provisions that lasted them for a while until when they left Egypt, they had their goodie bags that lasted them whatever certain amount of meals we learned then in the class. So how do you get 44 years if it lasted? In other words, if they left on Pesach, but it didn't start on Pesach, okay? It started in the next month because the good Jews had a bunch of food that they took with them. I think it was 30 days to the month of Iyar, the 15th of Iyar. They had enough food for 1 month with the provision they brought. And then the month came down on the 15th of Iyar. But that would be 40 years minus 1 month. And the Gemara answers, the answer is that although they had food when they left Egypt, that food tasted like manna. So it was considered like they were eating the manna. But the bottom line is, and even though Moses passed away on the 7th of Adar, that food ended up lasting till they still used the man that stopped coming down to eat it till Pesach. So the bottom line is it went from Pesach to Pesach for 40 years. And the man stopped coming down from when they came into the land of Israel. No more was there man for the Jewish people. And they ate from the grain of the land of Canaan. Shana in that year. And here comes an interesting story to finish off today's Chumash. What takes place after the Jews celebrate the holiday of Pesach? It was that Joshua was in Jericho, and Rashi says, of course, he wasn't in Yericho because the walls were all fortified and he might have gotten killed that he entered Jericho, but he was outside the walls because the outskirts of the city, the outskirts of Jericho are still called Jericho, Yericho. So he was in the outskirts of the city of Jericho, but it was considered already to be in Yericho, in Jericho. And he picks up his eyes, and all of a sudden, he sees there's a man standing up opposite him, and there's a sword in his hand. He sees an armed guy. So Yeshua approaches him, he goes to him, and he sees this person with the sword. Who are you with? Are you with us or are you against us? Are you planning on attacking us? Or are you planning on joining us, supporting us in this war that we're going to have now with Jericho? And he says, he says, I'm not a regular guy. I am the captain of the army. I'm the captain of the army of Hashem. As Rashi says, that it would be impossible for you to penetrate Jericho. It would be impossible for you to win it. You can't knock down those walls. And he says, I'm now coming to lead your war. Rashi says something very interesting. I never came in the times of Moshe. You want to know why? They never had the soldier fighting for the Jewish people. Because you know what happened when God said, I will send my angel with you to Moshe? Moses says, nothing doing. We don't want an angel. Take him away. Get him out of here. We just want Hashem. We want you clearly to fight. But as we're not in Moshe Rabbeinu's times anymore, we're now in Joshua's times. Hashem is sending a angel. I saw in the commentaries either the angel Gabriel or the angel Michael. I think Rashi is going to say it's the angel Michael, the angel Michael. And he is the prince, and he is the captain that's going to lead the army, because it's really not going to be the people that will help conquer Jericho, because it would be impossible physically to conquer it, but this angel will come instead. So Joshua hears the angel telling him that he is the holy angel, is the angel Michael, who's going to lead the war. Yeshua fell on his face, arts on the floor, and he bowed. I guess Yeshua never met him. In times of Moshe Rabbeinu, they never had angels. And he says, what are you telling your servant? What should I do? Tell me. So the captain of Hashem's host, the Lord, the angel who's going to lead the wars, says to Yeshua, take your shoes off your feet. The place that you're standing is holy. Yes, Yeshua did there. And so some of the commentaries explain, just add some of this, not Rashi, other commentaries will add, is that the only way you're going to win this is because of the holiness, because it's not a physically possible feat to conquer Yericho. This is only in a holy state will you be able to conquer. My son also one of the Gemara, it's brought down from the Talmud, that why did Yeshua have this experience of a guy in a sword all of a sudden coming with a sword? Like maybe he's like frightened for a minute. And the commentaries say is that Yeshua was also did two things that weren't good. One of the things he didn't, I'll tell you what the two things the Gemara says are. One thing is he should have already started bringing the daily sacrifice, and he didn't. Maybe because once they're in Israel, they have to start bringing the daily sacrifice. Another thing is that they were wasting time from learning Torah. Instead of studying Torah, they were busy with other things. Or maybe he himself was busy with other things. He should have been studying Torah. And he asked the angel came as kind of as a fright. One of the commentators, the Gemara wants to say, and the angel said, Yeshua said kind of like, why do you scare me like this? What is this about? What did I do wrong? And he says, you should have been more studying Torah. And Yeshua went right away and started studying Torah. So there's other commentaries too. This interesting story that takes place in the Navi. Any questions or comments on